on Prime Crime.
I found she's not breathing.
Who is it that's not breathing?
Her wife.
The untimely death of a young mother sends ripples of sorrow through an upscale suburb.
I tried to pick her up. She's dead. I was screaming, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Somehow I'm still thinking that she's going to be okay.
As investigators unearth the truth, they discover layers of deception, obsession, and lurking secrets.
Shanti was ambushed, was blindsided, never knew what was coming.
She was a very great woman. Everything about her was outstanding. Could never have expected anything to happen.
Hey there, everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime, where we break down the most compelling and memorable true crime cases from across the country. In April of 2018, a young mom in Orlando, Florida, suddenly dies under very strange circumstances. Is this an accident or something more?
Non-emergency, this call is recorded. Hello?
I found her wife. She's not breathing. I'm trying to do CPR. I can't
Okay,
get her
listen to me.
breathe. I need
Are
help.
and who is this?
This is David Cooper-Tronnes.
Okay, your name is David. Okay, who is it that's not breathing?
Her wife.
Okay, sir, I need you to take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
That's the voice of 49-year-old David Cooper-Tronnes. He calls 911 to report he came home to find his wife, 39-year-old Shanti Cooper-Tronnes, dead, face down in the bathtub in the garage apartment of the couple's upscale home.
What happened?
I found her in the shower.
And she passed away? Is she awake right now?
No.
Is she breathing?
I can't wake her up. I tried to do CPR. I can't get her to breathe.
Can you get her out of the shower?
I pulled her out.
And you don't know what happened or when anything happened?
No.
Back on April 24th of 2018, David Cooper-Tronnes called 911, seemingly hysterical.
Has she been sick or something?
Yeah, she's been sick, yes. Oh, God, what happened, baby? Baby.
She had appendicitis a couple months earlier and had surgery that she had some difficulty recovering from. First responders think that they're going to be coming into an accidental death or a fall or something like that. Shanti was found on the floor next to her bed. They can just immediately tell that this is not a fall. Rigor mortis had already started to set in.
Her right arm was up unsupported, up off the ground. She was lying on her back, and she was lying on a mattress pad that was full of blood.
She had some very unusual abrasions on her in very unusual places, on her hands and her knees.
She'd been beaten and strangled. She's pronounced deceased immediately.
The attack was so brutal that it blew a hole in her cheek, ripped off portions of her ear, fractured the back of both of her eye sockets, and broke her nose. She was manually strangled. Shanti was ambushed, was blindsided, never knew what was coming.
And this unexpectedly brutal scene leads detectives to believe something more is going on.
One of the things we both noticed about the bed, not only was it hastily made and the sheets were different colors, they were white, but they almost looked like brand new sheets on the bed that were crisp white and still had the creases from the box. There was cash in plain view, her purse was open in plain view, and no credit cards were taken, no cash was taken, nothing else of value was removed. Shanti was a 39-year-old, very beautiful mother. She was a professional woman. She had worked for a software company that built manufacturing software and then started her own business. She had a nanny that would assist her not only with Jackson, but also with her business.
She really liked to spend time with her family. She also loved her job. She loved what she did. Can't tell you what she did at all, But she definitely loved her family. She loved our dogs. We loved theme parks. We'd always go to theme parks, once or twice a month. She was scared to go on a lot of rides. She chickened out like 4 times, but she still went.
When work was done and we were able to relax, it was relaxing. Barbecues on the lake, just hanging out with friends, their kids, Jackson. Nothing crazy, just when it was time to relax, that's what we wanted to do.
No matter what kind of day she was having, she'd always have a smile on her face. She wouldn't let the bad things that happened that day affect the moment. She was a very great woman, and everything about her was outstanding. She was just overall the best mother that anyone could ever ask for.
Now, detectives need more answers as to what happened to Shanti, and they want to hear from David Cooper-Tronnes, so he's brought into the police station to talk.
Where were you born, hon? Here?
No, I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota.
And when did you move to Florida?
In 2013, 5 months after I met Shanti.
Did you meet her here or there?
I met online.
You met online? Okay. I'm sorry. Take your time.
He worked in Minneapolis as an engineer. David ultimately was divorced and met Shanti online. Their relationship evolved very quick and led to David moving from Minnesota to Orlando to be with Shanti.
You said something about having a great weekend?
Shanti had her appendix out on February, I want to say 23rd. And she's been in a lot of pain. I'm sorry I can't talk about her in the past. I've never been more in love. We were so happy.
Shanti was a hardworking mother. They were both coming out of previous marriages back when they met. By all accounts, it seems like her and David were very much, in love or in that sort of honeymoon phase.
Hi, family.
My dad I have to go.
He's right here.
Because my dad gets off early on his new job.
Okay. Who's probably today? I don't know. We'll find out.
Love you, Dada. Bye.
Love you so much, Jax. Have a good night tonight, okay?
I love you.
David worked back in Minnesota. Since he moved down to Florida in 2013, he didn't work at all. Her background was in finance and accounting. She had her own company.
She was very successful. She had been previously married to Jackson's father, Jim Cooper. They had been divorced about a year or two at the time that she met David.
She had recently divorced Jim, Jackson's dad. It was beyond acrimonious. I mean, they were at each other's, for quite a while.
At each other how?
Vindictive and mean and nasty things to Jackson, kind of thing, and blaming each other.
You always, in any investigation, start at your inner circle and you work your way out.
We don't believe she was alive on Tuesday morning, so it was important where Jim was the night before.
Jim ended up picking up Jackson and bringing him to the house. He shows up and there's all these police there. So we had quite a long, extensive interview with Jim. We were able to vet everything that he told us. So we absolutely had to rule him out.
On that day that it happened, there was almost a chance that I didn't pick him up. He would have been in that home when this happened. And I can't imagine.
Police know Jim didn't hurt Shanti. The question is, who did? To answer that, let's go back to understanding David Cooper-Tronnes' timeline of events.
Tell me about Monday night. What happened?
We were getting ready to go to bed at midnight. We sleep separately most of the time. She has really severe sleep apnea.
So where would you sleep?
Downstairs on the couch.
They wanted a complete renovation of the main house, so they were living in the loft above the garage. So he would often sleep in the garage with the dogs.
You wake up Tuesday morning, and what do you do?
The pool was full of leaves from the magnolia. I cleaned the pool out. She said she was going to try to sleep in a little bit, so I didn't. She came down after 7 o'clock, probably. She said she wasn't feeling very well. She had chipped her tooth the day before, and she had made a dentist appointment this morning, but she said she wasn't sure if she wanted to go. And she came down again. I'm so sorry.
He said she went back up and came down a second time, and then went back up and came down a third time around 9 in the morning and still had not showered yet or was not ready to leave for her appointment.
She has all this pain, and she just no-called and no-showed that appointment that she made the day before. That doesn't make any sense.
And then I put the dogs in the car and went to clean to Park of Americas before noon.
Do you see anyone at the park that you know?
I don't.
David said that Shanti went on with her day. He went on with his day by taking the dogs to a dog park and is unaccounted for several hours.
So you think you got home about what time?
2 o'clock. I put the dogs in. I kennel. I feed them. We have construction starting in a couple of weeks, so I'm cleaning the courtyard. I cleaned the pool out again.
What happens when you enter the home? Is anything unusual?
I could hear the water is running. I just walk upstairs. I didn't hear her. She's not saying anything. Doesn't seem right.
David told the police that at about 3 o'clock he went upstairs and found Shanti face down in the bathtub.
She's submerged partially. One of her legs is kind of sticking up and out a little bit. The water in the tub was tinged with blood. I pulled her out into the other room. I didn't know what to do. At first I tried to do CPR. She was still. I was losing it, and I thought I was losing her.
Her body is stiff. This is clearly a person that is beyond CPR.
Her clothing is wet?
Yeah. She felt cold. I tried to lift her head. She's not responding. She has blood coming down her face. I grabbed the mattress cover and put it under her head. I wiped her face off again. I started crying. Somehow I'm still thinking that she's going to be okay.
It is a chilling account, but upon a careful review of the details, a few things start to stand out. Coming up, detectives wonder, how could Shanti Cooper-Tronnes' body end up so battered if she had simply slipped and fell? Does her husband David know more than he's saying?
I think that you've told us a significant amount of information. You've been very cooperative. But I also think that you've left some stuff out. But there's something that happened between the two of you.
Hey everybody, we're going to get right back to the Tronnes case in just a minute, but before we do, look, stories like this one, they make you realize that the world is not an easy place. It is not a safe place. In fact, one of the scariest things that can happen to you is if you get injured. That is so incredibly traumatic and confusing. What do you do? Well, that's why I want to take a minute to call out our great partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. This is a firm you would want in your corner because they are specialists in this area. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm, and for a reason. They win a lot. They have secured multi-million-dollar verdicts and settlements. In fact, they secured a $120 million verdict in one of the first personal injury trials post-pandemic. And by the way, in that case, there was a pretrial offer of just $20,000. Yeah, Morgan & Morgan, they don't settle for lowball offers. They fight to protect your legal rights and for what you deserve in compensation. But one of the best things about Morgan & Morgan, and one of the things that I love to highlight about them, is how easy they make this whole process for their clients. From starting your claim to uploading documents to signing contracts to talking to your legal team, all of this can be done right from your smartphone. That's it. Seeing if you have a case only takes a few minutes. Oh, and by the way, no upfront fee. No, you only pay them if you win. So if you're injured, you can easily get this going by starting a claim at forthepeople.com/primecrime or by dialing #law. That's #529 on your phone.
I tried to pick her up. She's stiff. I'm kind of moving her, trying to shake her a little bit and trying to get the water out of her lungs. I didn't know what to do.
April 2018, Orlando, Florida. 49-year-old David Tronnes, a self-described contractor, says he found his wife of just 1 year, Shanti Cooper-Tronnes, dead after a fall in the couple's garage apartment bathroom where they'd been staying temporarily while their home was undergoing renovations.
Here's the breezeway. Here is the house.
However, detectives quickly determined something about Shanti's death was not adding up.
So the last communication in any way on the phone would have been Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, you would have been pretty much together.
We're together all the time. So
Okay. All right, so...
This is hard because I'm concerned that she wasn't okay when I left. And I wish I would have taken the time to check on her.
Her iPhone last moved at about 11:30 p.m. on April the 23rd. Shanti was a busy businesswoman who was involved in lots of meetings and discussions and calls, and her phone remained in the same place on that nightstand the entire day.
When was the last time you had telephone, text, on any Facebook, any sort of communication via phone with Shanti?
The day before.
He knows that Shanti is busy, but he also knows that Shanti has a broken tooth. But he never texts Shanti, never checks in. For about 4 or 5 hours, David's cell phone is quiet and in essence dead to the world.
And one thing investigators quickly home in on is David and Shanti's living situation.
We closed on the house on Copeland in April of 2015. We didn't move in right away. It took a few months to work on it.
David was able to buy the house for $608,000 in cash. It's a historic home from the 1920s and became the focus of David's life through the renovating of the house.
So you closed in May of 2015 and you started doing work. Was it in the condition that it's in now? Was it under renovation or?
It was fully livable. It was just an older Victorian style home. And Shanti wanted to completely open it up in concept. As we got into it, we found more and more issues.
You guys have completely gutted it down to the studs pretty much.
Yeah.
As time progressed, there was a bunch of renovation plans. The entire living space of the house, the kitchen, the living room, all of that was completely, essentially destroyed.
David's job basically was to be the contractor for this renovation. He had convinced her that he knew what he was doing. And after hiring and firing subcontractors for almost 2 years, I think she realized he did not know what he was doing. So someone in the neighborhood had recommended to both of them that they call this particular builder who was on this TV show.
I'm basically the general contractor for the project. I'm hiring subcontractors, and I hired a consultant to help us do that.
And who is that?
His name is Keith. Keith does a TV show. In March, he asked us to be on the show.
They had a meeting the week before her death, and she was dismissive. She did not want to come down to the pool area and meet with him. Maybe perhaps she wasn't as interested in doing the show as David was.
When talking about that day and about Shanti and about their relationship, David was somewhat reserved. When detectives would talk about things such as the house, his demeanor completely changes. He becomes very calm, but engaged, animated, really wanting to talk about this house and the improvements and the role that he played.
Has there been work crews at the house?
We finished the demo and started the framing that you see in January. We did the foundation in November and December. It's been moving slowly, but it's a huge project.
We kept an open mind the entire time. Were the construction and the contractors a possibility? Were the workers a possibility?
They followed up to see if there was an issue with potential transients in the area because there was a hospital nearby. They took DNA, they took latent prints, and ultimately, none of that came back to anyone except for the people that lived in the home. So there was just no indication that this was some random stranger or anything like that.
David ends up making several strange comments about his relationship with Shanti that raises serious red flags.
David was volunteering how much he and Shanti were in love and really wanted to paint a picture of a remarried couple who was blissfully happy and talking about the rest of their lives.
We just felt like we found like just a great rhythm, and we were both really, really happy. We were talking more, and it was great. We were really, really, really happy. And Saturday night, I think, was the first night that she really enjoyed just being kind of out and relaxing a little bit. Since her surgery, we haven't been able to have sex, and she wanted to try that night. We did.
He offered up to us without asking that they had been intimate on Saturday and again on Sunday. We both keyed in on that because we did not ask them about their sex life. I'm sitting there looking at him thinking, what is he trying to say?
It was messy. It was very messy.
So are you saying that blood got somewhere?
It did get on the bedspread, and it did get on the side of the bed, on the sheet.
It was a very unusual statement. We tried to narrow down where he meant we would find blood on the bed. He just kept saying it was everywhere, it was everywhere. That was an indicator to us that we needed to look further on that bed.
Is there something covering that up now or no?
We changed the sheets.
So there shouldn't be blood on that bed now, or is there?
There shouldn't be. She was bleeding when I brought her out of the tub. I would guess there is blood there. I would guess there is. I would guess there is still. We picked up the sheets and we ripped it up.
If you pull apart that interview and you look at the things that he said, he's trying to cover it up. He's trying to explain it away before we find it.
They go back on multiple search warrants and they find blood on the bed rails. It looks like it's been wiped on the visible side, but you can see where it had run down and hadn't been wiped on the sort of the side that you wouldn't see just looking at it with a naked eye. So it's just one of the 1,000 little pieces that come together and paint a picture of a person who's not being truthful.
Investigators know David Tronnes isn't being 100% transparent with them, and they want to know why.
You could give two about what happened to Shanti tonight. I told you she was murdered. Murdered. You can't even fake it. That's how much you could give it. Talk around in circles. Trust me, the evidence and her body speak for itself. And your story is BS. You either made a mistake or you're a cold-blooded killer. Which one are you?
It's April 2018, and homicide detectives in Orlando, Florida are questioning 49-year-old David Tronnes over the suspicious death of his 39-year-old wife, Shanti Cooper-Tronnes. He says he came home to find her dead in the bathtub, a standard slip and fall accident. But the evidence isn't adding up.
Did you two argue?
No, absolutely not.
Did you harm Shanti in any way?
Absolutely not.
Did you choke her?
Absolutely not.
Did you strangle her?
Without question, no.
Shanti did not fall and get those injuries.
Okay.
Without question. When was the last time the two of you argued?
Very briefly on Saturday.
If Jackson felt like you two argued about the house routinely, is that accurate or not?
I don't think most of the time that we're arguing about it. I can understand that might be his perception.
Has any fight ever turned physical between the two of you?
No.
There were fights and arguments about the home renovation and the money involved, and it was pretty clear there was a financial aspect to this.
The injuries that this woman sustained, absolutely 100%, in my opinion, not possible from a slip and a fall in a bathtub.
David reported that he found Shanti in the bathtub full of water and then took her out of the tub in order to give her CPR.
There was no water anywhere. There was no water puddled on the bathroom floor. There was no water marks on the carpet where she would have been dragged from the bathroom.
Using some luminescent chemicals, they were able to see that there had been blood in the tub up to a certain line. They were able to find some latent prints around the tub and on the door frame that ultimately came back to either Shanti or to David.
For you to see the significance of her injuries up close and personal like you did and come up with this cockamamie theory that she fell and hit her head is just baffling to me that you thought we would believe that. You strangled her. There is no one home but you. This is not looking good for you.
I have never, ever, and would never, ever hurt her.
We always say the body doesn't lie, but people do. Her injuries and what had happened to her in that house was not lying to us. And the evidence doesn't lie, but clearly he was.
Despite all of this, there's still not quite enough evidence to hold David Tronnes. But months later, investigators learned there was a different side to his life, one that few knew about.
State your full name.
My name is Arthur Adams.
We are now at the 7-Eleven. You work here?
Yes.
And you have a second job as well?
Yes.
There were definitely indicators to us that there was possibly trouble in the marriage. We learned from canvassing the neighborhood that David had a whole other life. Where is that?
At Club Orlando. It's a gay men's gym spa.
Is David a member of the club?
Yes.
How many times in the last 18 months do you think you've seen David on average?
Like at least twice a week.
And the last time you saw David at Club Orlando?
Maybe 5 days before the murder.
David's life was one of smoke and mirrors, of using people, of denial of reality. David never referred to Shanti as his wife, but only his partner. This was something that stood out as being questionable as we later investigated and found David's complete second life, including trips to the men's bathhouse just 2 miles down the street from their home. It definitely raised the suspicion of whether David did have a complete second life unknown to Shanti.
Having a double life is not a crime, but it does lead investigators to name David Tronnes as their #1 suspect in the brutal murder of his wife. Yet, something is still missing.
The story of the sheets is the wildest story of my 19-year legal career.
This Tronnes case is very, very disturbing. And whenever I hear stories like this, I'm always asking myself, how well do you really know who's in your life? Who are you letting into your life? Do you really know all you should know? It's a scary concept to think about, but let me talk to you about our incredible sponsor and partner who may be able to help you out here, Truthfinder. So Truthfinder is a service that can provide actual safety for you guys. And I say that because Truthfinder is one of the largest public records search services in the United States. Their whole goal is to help people like you learn about the people in their lives. And here's how it works. You go on their website, truthfinder.com, and you type in a name. Make it easy. You type in my name, Jesse Weber. You type in my name, and within minutes and a paid subscription purchase, you can access unlimited reports that can include information like phone numbers, location history, criminal and traffic records, including possible arrests and criminal convictions. I don't have those, but you get the idea. You hear what I'm saying. Now, Truthfinder has actually been partnering with Law&Crime for a while now. We actually use it to research some of the cases that we cover, but just generally speaking, Truthfinder can help provide peace of mind when you do these unlimited public records searches. Also, you know what's really useful? From within that report, you can search an address, like your home address, to see registered sex offenders that may live in that area too. And that's the point. Unless you use Truthfinder, you may never know the reality about the people around you. Truthfinder, by the way, can be used to look up information about all different kinds of people. You meet people you meet on social media, new dates, people you're buying or selling to online, the parents of your child's friend. Look, you can never be too careful. And here's the kicker. Right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LCPrimeCrime.
You know, in your heart, what happened. And you know what the right thing to do is. What happened to me, David?
Orlando detectives know there's still work to be done to nail David Tronnes for the murder of his wife, Shanti Cooper-Tronnes, who he says was found dead in the bathtub. And it all comes back to one key piece of evidence.
Where's your wedding ring?
Pardon me?
Where's your wedding ring?
Mine?
Mm-hmm.
It's right here.
She has a wedding band on her left hand?
Correct.
So today she had on her wedding ring?
Correct.
One thing that the detectives noticed when they arrived on the scene that night was that Shanti didn't have her ring, and her ring was not accounted for.
Shanti wore her wedding set every single day. So for her not to have it on when we observed her body, there could have been a number of explanations for that. When we asked David, he's saying it's on her finger, and we both knew it wasn't.
Ultimately, we found it in his possession, in his bedroom, in a suitcase at his mother's house.
The first thing that came to my head was checkmate. We found the trophy that David kept from that day. Now, was it a remembrance of the relationship they had? Maybe. Was it a remembrance of being able to do and get away with this crime for months and months? I think that's also likely.
With holes in Tronnes' story, forensic evidence, and a very telling crime scene, detectives have enough to arrest and charge David Tronnes with first-degree murder. But it's something that happens nearly a year later that brings the case to a stunning conclusion.
I got a phone call from David's criminal defense attorney. He realized that he had an item of physical evidence in his possession.
He had an attorney pretty much the day after her body was discovered. We put a camera on the house within a few days of her death, and the camera captured 2 private investigators removing evidence from the house. One of the things we were looking for from the very beginning is what I like to call blood spatter at inception. So where did this event occur? And if there was blood on the mattress pad, there should be blood on the sheets. And there was no blood on the sheets on that bed. His first set of attorneys hired the private investigator to remove the sheets from the home. The sheets had been laundered to the point where if you saw them on a search, you wouldn't think they were bloody. Once we got them, we spread them out, and you can see blood spatter, likely where her pillow would have been.
The Orlando Police Department asked the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to conduct an investigation about the concealing of this evidence. And ultimately, decisions were made by the state attorney's office to not file charges against the initial defense attorneys.
But David Tronnes' case didn't happen right away. As his defense initially argued, he was not competent to stand trial.
It was extremely difficult for so long. So many hearings, it was all about him and his rights. And it didn't really seem to be about her.
When I started going to hearings around the 3rd or early 4th year of this being dragged out, I brought a picture of my mom to every single hearing as a reminder that even though she's not here physically, she's always with us. I also held up her picture at the end of every hearing just to show you that it's just more than just a name on a paper and more than just a news headline. She's more than just that.
We were going to keep making sure that everybody would see her face because we weren't going to go away.
5 years after Shanti's death, in October 2023, prosecutors finally get the chance to lay out their case before a jury.
Back in 2013, David Tronnes moved to Florida to be with Shanti. When he moved to Florida, he was able to purchase a beautiful, large home. David and Shanti would argue and bicker about the home and the construction and what was going on, and her not having any ownership in the home.
There were indications she was funding that renovation, but he was very much treating this beautiful $500,000 residence as his and not as theirs.
The house is everything to David. It's his identity, it's his passion project, it's really the focus of his life even more than his wife. He loved that house more than anything else. Shanti controlled the destiny of that house. And how desperate was David to make sure that the renovations went through and his gem was polished?
As the house became progressively more and more unlivable, that caused an obvious tension in the relationship. This home show was the lifeline out of this mess with this house that they've dug themselves into, and she, a week before her murder, was not into it.
The likely motive, I think, is he had an alternate lifestyle where he was behind her back seeing men. And then one of the last things that he had tried to do right before we arrested him is he had made a request to get her life insurance. With all of the accounts and the life insurance, he stood to gain over $1 million.
This was a murder of rage, of anger, of extreme violence. The only reasonable explanation for Shanti's death is sitting right there.
The state starts presenting their witnesses, from David and Shanti's friends to neighbors and experts.
As a couple, did they appear to be affectionate towards each other?
No. I never saw them hold hands, touch, kiss. It was a little strange.
Were you ever made aware of any tensions related to the house that they lived in?
Yeah, I mean, it was, being that it was under the renovation, there was a lot of tension, a lot of fights.
When he walked alone, did he have any canine companions?
Almost always.
Now, on April 24th of 2018, did you see either Shanti Cooper-Tronnes or David Tronnes, the defendant, walking?
Yes, I saw David.
Did he have any canine companion or companions with him?
Not on this day.
A local neighbor told law enforcement that she was coming home from the grocery store and saw David walking alone in the neighborhood. Police showed a picture of David that day to the neighbor, and the neighbor said that David was wearing different clothes at 12 p.m. than the ones that he was wearing at 4 p.m. You know, it's little facts like that that really stands out when you have somebody telling a story that doesn't match up.
Row 13's entry, according to E&F, is 4/23, 2018, 11:19 p.m. There is no other entry until April 24th, 2018 at 10:11 p.m., correct?
That's correct.
So this device registered no distance, no steps, essentially 23-hour span of time.
Yes.
Shanti had a step tracker on her phone that recorded, her going up and down the stairs. She always had her phone with her. There was no steps tracked of her at all on April 24th. And that doesn't fit with his telling of that day. There's evidence that she got a text message, work-related, very early in the morning, about 6:58, that she never read and never responded to. The theory was that this attack either happened around midnight when she was going to bed or early in the morning as she was getting up.
This kind of is a theory, but if she's seated on the edge of the bed above where the blood dripped to the slots, when she is removing her right earring, she's looking possibly at David. And maybe they're arguing over the renovation, or maybe, the relationship is ending. But the moment she goes to her left earring, her head would have been turned away from him. And so if she's starting to remove this earring, that's when she takes this blow to the left side of her head. She never saw it coming.
Was there anything other than the defendant's statement to you and Detective Sharp that indicated that Shanti Cooper-Tronnes was alive past the steps the night before at 11:19 p.m.?
There's nothing that indicates any sign of life past Monday night.
But the defense paints a different picture without calling any witnesses of their own.
They would have you believe that this was an unhappy marriage, that they lived separate lives, that the marriage was crumbling. This is a case about a rush to judgment. It's about a sloppy investigation. It's about circumstantial evidence. All this financial motive, it's hooey.
The theme that the defense tried to develop was police didn't do a thorough investigation, and they targeted David.
You're not here to play detective. You're not here to solve a crime. You're here to determine if the government has proven the crime that they have alleged, that Shanti Cooper-Tronnes was murdered, and David Tronnes is the person that did it. Submit to you they did not.
Let's go to April the 24th.
Did you tell him that this was a domestic violence assault before even speaking to Mr. Tronnes?
No. I told him that the husband was the one who called us and that what his statements were. No, I did not indicate who was responsible for her death. We didn't know.
You were suspicious, though, weren't you?
Of the story, of the inconsistencies, yes, of course. They basically blamed our investigation and said it was lacking in substance and that we had made a lot of errors, that the police investigation was shoddy.
Isn't it true you developed Mr. Tronnes as a person of interest or suspect from jump? That you didn't believe a word out of his mouth?
That's not true.
Did you prejudge him for the lack of emotion?
No, I did not prejudge him for the lack of emotion. Her ex-husband was just as much of a suspect as he was, but you have to be able to eliminate people, and you have to start with the person who called 911.
You became concerned with some of the details you noted at the crime scene, correct?
I became concerned with some of the details I noted in the crime scene. As discussed, no water, no wet, those things, yes.
No, detective.
I became very concerned with inconsistencies, yes.
As this case developed, there was no real coherent defense. There were no facts to establish any other identity of any other person. No pry marks on doors to show a burglar. No stolen valuables. No evidence of animosity or bad relationships with Shanti and other people.
During that trial, it was long days. We didn't sleep at night. When the jury got the case for a couple hours, that seemed like an eternity. They kept coming back with questions, and we were trying to decipher what they meant. That really made us crazier than we already were.
After nearly 5 hours of deliberations, the jury returns their verdict.
State of Florida versus David Tronnes. Verdict reads, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment. So it says we all.
In that moment when the verdict is actually announced, it's like time stops. And I remember looking over at Jackson, and he waited for that day for so long. And in the span of 90 seconds from when the jury entered the room to the verdict was read by the court clerk, justice was delivered for him.
My heart was racing like a couple 100,000 paces a minute. But when I heard the verdict, I was overjoyed, and it was the best moment of my life.
The night of the verdict, we were walking to the truck, and Jackson was shrugging his shoulders. I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I feel lighter, like a weight's been lifted."
David Tronnes is found guilty of first-degree murder and faces a possible life sentence in prison.
To me, the greatest satisfactions in this case was David having to be faced with the truth of what he did.
When this parasite came into our lives, he took something from us, and most importantly from Jackson, and what he took is not replaceable. He lost a good parent. It is still unfathomable to me what he put Jackson through.
I couldn't look at him. I knew if I looked at him, I would do something I would regret. And I wouldn't say his name. He doesn't deserve that. He told a lot of lies. So I just wanted to set the record straight and let the judge know that it needs to be life without parole.
My mom was the best person I ever knew. She worked a lot, but she never put her family over work. Early 2018, she was taken from me and my family. It's like a hole in my heart that I can't fill or fix. She didn't die peacefully. She did not deserve anything that happened to her that night. She was the best mom I could ever ask for.
The court will adjudicate you guilty, will sentence you to life imprisonment.
David took control of so many things. He took control of the house. He took control of finances. He took control of how long Shanti lived.
Personally, I'd like so people to know how hard of a worker she was. She knew how to get stuff done, and she did it with 100% precision. She was very good at what she did. She was more than just someone that was murdered.
If it can happen to her, it can happen to anybody. If one person hears her story and might think they're in that kind of a relationship, then maybe they can get out before it's too late. And then that would be something positive that came from her memory.
We both worked as hard as we worked on this case for Jackson because of the tragedy to that little boy, for him having to grow up without his mom. There's not a day that goes by that they won't grieve for her, that grief is really just love with no place to go.
In the end, this case largely centered on the house and the remodeling and the arguments. We're fighting for the house for Jackson so that Jackson can decide at some point in the future what to do with this place that brought the worst incident that he'll ever have in his life. And whether Jackson sells it or whether Jackson takes a sledgehammer and knocks it to the ground, our fight now is to give Jackson control of what happens to this place.
Kind of weird, having the same routine for 6 years, then all of a suddenly being over.
It's like a new normal. We have many more good days than bad days now that the trial's over. We just had Mother's Day, so we went to the beach and the flowers in the ocean, because she loved going to the beach with him. And we talk a lot about her, just try to honor her memory.
It was a long road for Shanti's family to finally see justice for Shanti's murder. And while David Cooper-Tronnes fights his case on appeal, he sits in prison. The man who wanted to have it all now has nothing. That's all we have for you here on this episode of Prime Crime. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jesse Weber, and until next time, stay safe.